All right. Welcome to the Kubeflow Pipelines Community Meeting, everyone. Today's date is April 23rd, 2025. This meeting is governed by the CNCF Code of Conduct. The meeting is recorded and will be uploaded to the Kubeflow YouTube account after the call has ended. There is a separate Kubeflow Pipelines playlist section. And I think I might have actually forgotten to upload last meeting. So if that's the case, I'll upload that one too after this call. So sorry about that. All right, so let's just dive in. So, let's start with, as usual, start with introductions. So if there's anybody that is new in the call and would like to take an opportunity to introduce themselves, the floor is yours.
I'm Don. I work at Capital One. I work with Alex Perlman, and I'm happy to be here.
Nice. I like your topic that you're going to talk about today. So
Oh,
nice to
great.
meet you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? All right, cool. Next topic. So I just wanted to bring to the attention Kubeflow Pipelines 2.5 release. So there is a milestone that it exists, and my hope is that we can do the release this week. Those that are responsible for the remaining issues, I think we've reached out to everyone. So just to kind of reiterate, there's a Kubeflow pipelines Kube native pull request that is pending. We're hoping, ideally, that's merged today or tomorrow. That'll be a nice addition, and it will also be disabled by default. But if you're curious, and we'll put in a whole like announcement about all this stuff. And then there's also the DSL collected. So Michael, you are aware of this one. We synced up this morning, and there's some other additional. So Matt, your model car, I'll bother you probably this week about adding some docs around that. There is also a front end pull request. I know that the author has followed up on this. Matt, I know you're looking at this. Is Matt here? He is. So if you get the bandwidth and can follow up with this individual, no rush on this though. If we can't get it for 2.5, that's fine.
Okay, sounds good.
And I think I wanted to, so Matt, there's these two PRs. This one's a little bit older, but is this the same as this one? Is this like superseding this PR, or is this different?
So I could talk to them. They're different. Um the that last one was essentially we were able to like take outputs from components within a pipeline definition and kind of group them into either like a list or a dictionary and then feed that as like downstream input to another component in V1. And the compiler was just able to like handle it all.
I see.
So with
Um,
this, yeah, for V2, there's like a change in implementation of like updating the pipeline spec, but I think I plan to close this one for another one that would actually be leveraging like what's in TFX called like a union. So like kind of replicate that behavior since at least right now V2 is kind of based off of TFX.
okay, that sounds good. Sounds like this is probably not for 2.5 then.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move this out. And right now I'm pushing for 2.6. If this is being superseded by something else, or maybe there's a broader issue that we can be tracking instead, uh, either way, leave it to you on how we want to proceed with this. Okay, so that's that for 2.5. Any questions? All right, cool. Next is another topic I have. This is so I was hoping Chen would be here, but he was unable to join, so I'm annoying him on Google Comments. There's a backwards incompatibility change that went out in 2.12, and Matt put in a fix for it, and this is a release for it. So this is the first time I'll be doing an SDK release, so that's why I'm just hoping to get Chen's like acknowledgement on this. But if he's not able to do it this by today, we'll just have another reviewer look at it and then we'll do a release. And that's about it. So look out for that.
Yeah,
And
Humir, if we have time at the end of the call, we can maybe talk about versioning. And this is a good
yeah,
example. Once we have KFP 2.6 being aligned with the SDK version, what the versions mean. Definitely.
love it. You're gonna raise that discussion at the end.
Okay.
Volunteered. All right. John, you have the next one.
Right. So I just set out trying to increase code coverage for the launcher v2.go file. And the PR kind of, well, I guess it got kind of big. It's tagged as like a size XXL. And I've made some changes to like function signatures, things like the new launcher v2 constructor. I've added this struct to allow like dependency injection, so I could inject like, kind of like mocks and things like that for unit testing. And I didn't want to just put a PR out there that's sort of just that's too big to really review thoroughly. So I'm wondering, should I break this up to maybe like if there's something with a function signature change, like just if I'm unit testing new launcher v2 and introducing this new struct to inject dependencies, should I just put that out there independently, or is it fine as is?
So size-wise, this doesn't look too bad. So if the function signature changes are for the to support the tests that are being introduced, then it makes sense to me to have them here, because then you'd just be adding like changes that are not being used. If I'm understanding you correctly, you want to like introduce these structs and stuff, but the logic that'll be utilizing them, the tests would come after. Is
Oh
that what
no,
you're saying?
I meant that I would introduce these function signature changes and the unit test, a unit test that uses them, but keep that like I'm only, for instance, I'm only testing one function in that unit test, like just
I
testing
see.
new launcher v2. Just keep that as its own PR. The rest
I
I
see.
can do later.
Yeah, that seems like a good separation. If you want to show that like, okay, this PR is about changing these this logic to support tests, and this is one example of that test, so that then we can scope the discussion to like the API changes, right? I think that's reasonable. I think it increases the chances that we'll get it reviewed and merged faster if you want to take that route. And then you can follow up with more tests, and then we can scope that discussion on the tests themselves being added.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Yeah. If you can, when you introduce like the PR for just the signature changes, you can also link to this holistic code if you want. Like if you're curious about what the other tests would look like, then the reviewer can take a look at that too.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions, comments about this?
From anybody else?
Hey, awesome. I really like this because it's bothered me for the longest time. I just skimmed it. It looks like you introduced like mock tests for and like tests for MLMD execution codes and what have you, which has been severely lacking. So happy to see that. Let us know ping us in Slack when it's out of work in progress, and we can try to take a look.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, one of the dependencies I introduced is like GoMock, or I guess Uber Uber's maintained mocking library. Is that okay to introduce a dependency?
I think we'll leave that for review. It's hard to say. I don't know it. I think we'd have to take a look. Just make sure that it's well maintained. If you're adding any dependency like that.
Okay, great.
Maybe you need to look at licensing. I don't know, but I think that would go as part of the review.
Okay, thanks.
You can note it in your either review comments or sorry, in the PR review comments or in your PR body if you want to make a specific call out.
Sure. All right, thank you.
Ricardo, you have the next topic.
Yeah, it should be a quick one. So just to give an overview on the general Kubeflow community calls, we are working towards graduating Kubeflow under CNCF. One of the things that we've been working on is to there are lots of requirements that we still need to fulfill for graduation, but one of the things that we initially we're talking about is the OpenSSI best practices. And we started with adding a badge for all of the Kubeflow sub-projects that OpenSSI best practices. And there's this form that I still need to evaluate. And with that, we'll be able to get a minimal requirement for CNCF graduation. There are three phases for this form. One is the passing requirement that they call it, and then there's the silver and the gold. My plan is to get Kubeflow pipelines to reach silver, which is more than enough for us to get CNCF graduation. But I'll keep you posted on any updates on that. Basically, this OpenSSF best practices form is just adding evidences that we are meeting with all of these requirements. And with that, there's someone in OpenSSF that will review that, and then we'll return with a SDK or an SDK that the requirements are correctly met. So this is the very just beginning of our graduation path, but I can say that the pipelines took a step in advance to help Kubeflow community to work with the CNCF graduation. We're the first one that got this badge merged in our repo and monitoring those OpenSSF requirements. So for any other updates, I'll keep posting in the next KFT meetings. And I think that's it. If there anyone with any questions or comments about this, feel free to do.
So I don't know that much about this page. Is this a form that like where did these criteria come from? Is this you wrote these out that are coming as requirements from CNCF, or is this like a standard form? Or
It's just a standard form from OpenSSF.
Okay.
And for any if you go with any of those requirements, you see that there is a radio button for mat, unmat, and an incognito. If you mark any of these requirements as a met requirement, you need to provide evidences that you met this requirement, and then the OpenSSF team will take a look and see if agrees or not with that evidence.
I see. Okay, so that makes sense. So we'd have to go these by point and then be able to provide evidence that like, okay, we meet this requirement, and then they will update this section.
Correct.
Sounds good. We'll probably want to go down these then and see what action items are remaining to be able to check these out and prioritize. Sounds like a potential epic.
Yeah. My first action with this form is to ensure that we have as much of these requirements met already. And for this, that still requires us to get the silver mark. I'll bring to the KIP calls to see how we can work to fulfill this requirement.
Awesome. Thanks, Ricardo. It's very helpful.
Thanks.
Any other comments, questions, concerns about this? All right. Not going to go very far with this one because we don't have Chen. I have had not much success trying to reach out to Alexei, which is a former Google employee that has owner access to this. Well, Google team still that is involved with Kubeflow pipeline still has access, but it's like a team, and I don't think they can like extend permissions out. So what we do next with this is I'm leaning towards just changing the package and starting anew for this specific package. So we'll probably need Chen present to further this discussion. So I'll put this in the back burner for now. Daniel, you have the next topic.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Sumer. So I've got another proposal. I know I've got two out already. Hopefully this will be the last one for a little while, but this is, I think, a super important issue. So a proposal for KFP component pipeline validation. The link there goes to a document that is still a work in progress, but it's a Google Doc that I'd love to have people here take a look at and make comments on. The pain point basically is that right now you can run your Kubeflow pipeline and everything looks okay, and then on step number 7 or 20 or whatever it is, like the pipeline fails, and that's like super frustrating. And you can waste time doing that, and then also especially with a lot of these enterprise applications, it can cost thousands of dollars to run a pipeline. So if it's something as simple as like I didn't import NumPy in my inside my component, like that's something that we can probably catch with validation. And so that's kind of what this proposal is to try and catch those issues before you run the pipeline, so that like, oh, I've got something I need to fix, or this cluster doesn't have this dependency that I need. And the truth is, like, pipelines have a lot of different dependencies at a lot of different levels. So there's like the code level, the Python code level. There's system dependency or like node dependency level. There's like expectations around the cluster itself, the resources that are available, maybe a CRD or config map. And so that, yeah, those dependencies are really, like, it's hard to keep track of them all. And right now the responsibility is on the ML developer to keep track of them. And when you think about the fact that like ML developers are, so they're running these pipelines in different clusters. You might run it in a dev cluster first and then the staging cluster. It's really hard to like keep track of those dependencies across clusters. And then this last thing I'll mention is like, this is kind of what kind of led me to this idea of validation. There's a question of like sharing components with others. And if I don't have confidence that like a shared component is going to run in my cluster, sharing doesn't really work well. And so I think that's kind of a problem where if we can help just create a framework for validation and make it easy for people to like validate whether this component or this pipeline can run in this cluster, then we're going to make it a lot easier for people to share components and pipelines with each other. And then also just, clear up that headache of running and waiting to see if there's errors that happen and then having to debug those. So I think there's, like I said, a lot of layers. So I think people here probably have experience with some of these issues and maybe ideas about like how we can best implement this at the different layers. So would love to have people take a look and give input on it. And like I said, it's still a work in progress. So yeah, love to have feedback, and then I'm going to continue to work to kind of fill in the placeholders and details as well. Yeah, any thoughts or questions?
I have some thoughts, but I'll wait to see if anybody else.
Or initial
Yeah, I need to give it a closer look, but the things that come to mind is that it's hard to validate certain things unless you're running the actual container image that is declared on the component, like the base image. And if you have multiple different base images, I guess that could get expensive. You'd have to run a prerequisite step for each, but perhaps that's already covered. So I'll give it a look tomorrow.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. And that's a great point. Some things are easier to validate. Others are going to be a lot harder. Yeah.
Anyone else?
I'll just add in general, I think it would be good to have a standardized way to add prerequisite checks though. So I think the spirit of the proposal is definitely good. So glad you're doing that, because I think that's a common thing for very large pipelines that are maybe more user facing rather than highly customized to a specific person or a specific team. But if it's something that's generically used, maybe across a company or an open source shared, that's when I see the real value.
I echo the sentiment about like certain things are going to be more difficult to validate. And I remember one discussion, for instance, that we had, which was there was an individual that put in a PR, and what they wanted to do was they wanted to validate that, like, oh, you're putting in, so here you at the bottom you ask about like the Kubernetes package, right? So if I'm well, in this one actually it wasn't the Kubernetes package, it was setting CPU limits and type switches done directly through the SDK. And they wanted to validate whether like it was of proper format or whatever. And another a person from the community was kind of questioning that decision because we would be re-implementing some of the validation that Kubernetes is doing, right? And that is something we would expect that like when you submit it, we would let Kubernetes handle it, and KFP would remain agnostic about this or unopinionated about this. So I think there will be other instances like that in consideration when we talk about validating what is in the runtime environment and also like deployed on the cloud. I think in those kinds of scenarios, what we can do is hopefully enable APIs which make it, because there'll be layers in which you handle validation, right? And we want to make sure that like client side is enabling like backend side with its APIs. So like we have types being mentioned in the pipeline spec, right? And this can be utilized by either the front end or back end to perform further validation on like your types and what have you. So I really like the spirit of this though. And we have these kinds of issues too. Like we've had to add like in our pipelines components that would be running beforehand to validate things, right? And we were doing that very manually, and there wasn't no like, and that's not going to be a unique case for that specific pipeline. Like this is if you're going to be running a really long pipeline many times, right? When you're doing model training and so forth. So you want to make sure you're starting out with the right parameters, you're starting out with the right runtime environment, images are present, whatever, GPUs are present, whatever, right? Or so I think the spirit of this is very on point. What is your next steps for this? Are you hoping to get feedback on this Google Doc or
Yeah. So I mean, first step was just, hey, I'm working on this, you know, kind of letting people know. I do need to flesh out the proposal more. And then there's kind of the sections at the end too, like test case and stuff like that are that I really haven't done much work on. So but I think it's it's in, you know, good enough state now that that people can comment on what's there already. So if you have like things that you're like, hey, I want to make this a priority, or hey, there's, you know, like the comments that have been made, you know, this might be something that has issues, or, you know, stuff like that. I'll definitely look at comments that people make, and so yeah, but right now it's still in development as a proposal. Once I get it into good shape and it looks like there's kind of more consensus, I want to move this into a PR on the proposal, under the proposal directory in the repo. But yeah, for now it's still just I think working as a Google document and collaborating with everyone.
One small suggestion: if you could enable syntax highlighting Google Docs, that you do that. That would be nice.
Yeah.
There's a lot. You're introducing a lot of Python
I actually
APIs
copied
here.
this from a Markdown that I was working on. So yeah,
If you do like, if you
that-
do something like, I don't know, I can't do it here really quickly. Right, then you can select Python, and then it'll be
Oh, yeah,
Python
yeah.
formatted. Yeah, so just a pro tip. Now I can get rid of it. No.
I just copied this from just a few hours ago. So yeah, there's some formatting that needs help too.
Daniel, if you already have it in Markdown, would it be okay if you created a PR instead, just marked as like a work in progress, so like the discussion isn't lost in the community?
I can do that. Yeah, I'll do that soon. I've been bouncing back and forth, I guess, between, because I feel like a Google Doc is like easier for people to collaborate, and so and like make comments. So I've been, I guess, bouncing back and forth between which one would be best. But yeah, I'll definitely get to a PR soon.
I don't have an easy answer there either. I see, like, yeah, sometimes things are just easier to work with on Google Docs, but we'll lose the history. So I don't know, whatever you feel is best.
Yeah, I'll give my my commitment to get it to a PR status. So we'll get there.
All right, cool. This is another, again, I need Chen for this, I think, but I can at least get everybody else's thoughts on this. Maybe I'm the only one that's very strongly opinionated about this. But if you guys have noticed, there is like, before there was like 1,000+ branches in KFP, and I hate this. A lot of them are like, in the past, the maintainers were using the repository, and yeah, they had a lot of, I don't know if you can easily find them here. The GitHub UI doesn't easily list all of them, but there tend to be a lot of like development branches, like Chenson patch 5, for example, right? And some of them were PRs that were either closed out or they were merged, and I just want to delete all of them. I would like to see is just have the branches that are related to release, and yeah, like, I don't know, if I go to, for example, Argo workflows, GitHub, let me see. I'm guessing they're gonna have something like 56 branches, right? I don't see their release branches. Yeah, release. So like, they have some cherry pick stuff. I wouldn't put that either, but like, I would just want to keep release branches, and there might be some automation stuff that's happening. I know that the Google automation that forwards the component changes, they creates a new branch, so we would want to change that. But just deleting the old still branches that are developer branches, I don't know if anybody cares about the history of those. I think it was largely Chen's team, so I like to clean it up. So that's it. All right, raising awareness.
I like fewer branches, but like, what's the next step here? You say you want to do that.
I mean, I'm probably going to do it. I'm just gonna get an acknowledgement from Chen, because it was a lot of that work is from his team.
Okay.
So I'll probably
Cool.
tag him like I did here. So here, a lot of these branches seem like they were from previous KFP maintainers. Be fine with me removing them. Done. That's the next step. All right. Raising awareness on, so made a post. So I did some looking into KFP local. And there were a lot of decisions that were made in the past about just not implementing certain control flow features, for example, or other things were just kind of left out of consideration because the way it was approached in the past was that it was primarily a developer experience. Although I would argue that these things are kind of useful to have, even if you're doing it as a developer and your intent is not to use KFP local in any sort of production setting, and that's fine. But I think a lot of this stuff applies in that for that persona as well. And this is a start to kind of closing those gaps between KFP local. This is we from our kind of like downstream of KFE, we see this as a priority, and we want to also try to like push this. I've seen some activity here of like interest from other folks. Michael, you've commented and reached out, so we can certainly sync up on that. Bringing attention to this, if you see things on here in KFP local that you wish were there and are in the remote. So right now, I would like us to prioritize on closing gaps between local and remote. New features that I don't really want us to prioritize adding new features to KFP local that are not in remote or plan to be in remote. So not those for now. Just closing gaps would be a good start. And so this is a an epic issue to address that. If you are interested in tackling one of these, let me know. Reach out to me. We can like discuss how to best approach that. Probably create a spin-off issue. I can create a sub issue here. I don't think others have permission to do this. Maybe you do, but I thought I didn't want to start with creating like 20 issues that would just flood the issues page. So just know that this exists, and if you're interested, reach out and expect some activity on this in the coming quarter. All right. Any questions about that? Oh, yeah, and he says he started messing around with the Podman runner. So look at that. All right. Version discussion. Matt.
Yes. So I guess first question is for the next KFP release, not 2.5, but the one after 2.5, is it the intention to align it with the SDK versioning as well? I know we had agreed that we should do that, but
yeah, it's happening. Like,
okay,
it's
okay.
done. I think
so. It should be 2.6. It should be something else, right?
So I've created this
2.14.
milestone. I think it still needs to be properly refined and planned out. But right now, just throughout the last month or two, I think I've been adding what people have been raising. I've left a comment here that says this version will likely be updated to align with the next KFP SDK release. So it will probably not stay as 2.6.0. In this release, we'll be synchronizing all the minor versions for KFP SDK and Kubernetes platforms package.
Okay, cool. So the next question is, like, I think we definitely want to support that any older SDK works on newer KFP backends.
Yeah.
The question is if I use a newer SDK that uses an old feature, should it still work? And I'll give a concrete example. So originally, when you're like setting CPU requests or limits, things like that, it didn't support parameterization. Parameterization support was added later on, and that added a new API field. And so if you wanted it to be backwards compatible, essentially if it's not a pipeline input parameter, just use the old field. But if it is a pipeline input parameter, use the new field. But like this is like some sort of compatibility that we always have to maintain. And the question is, do we want to maintain that forever?
I don't remember what the exact task setting was. Is it like set CPU limit or something like that?
Yeah,
Anyways.
I think so. Yeah.
Like, so
should it
yeah.
always set the old field if it's compatible, and then opt into the new field if you're using parameterization?
So I think this captures it, right? So suppose we come out, suppose the next KFP release is 2.13 and So we know that the patch versions may not align because we will continue to release patch versions, right? So this is an API that used to work with KFP 2.4 today. Like you can set this. The call I think might be slightly different. I'm not sure, but you can set CPU limit on your task today, right? Should it be guaranteed that this, if I'm using KFP 2.13 that was released with the for SDK that was released with 2.13, should this continue to, if I create this and I compile it and I submit it to a KFP 2.4 backend, right? Is this guaranteed to work, or should it be guaranteed to work? Does that capture the spirit of your question?
Yeah, exactly. Because it seems like historically, like the same Python API or like Python method can set different underlying API fields in the pipeline spec IR. And so I guess it's maybe also a different question is like, should we continue doing that in the SDK? That, or if you start using a new API field, should you have a different method as well on the Python side? Because that's where the issue is coming from, is that you're doing something that used to work, but then might be using a new field under the hood. And so like before, I wouldn't be able to put pipeline input parameter, a set CPU limit, that would have failed. But if I try to do that now, it will compile. But if I put down an old KFP backend, it would fail.
Yeah, I think so. In the past, because like the versions weren't aligned, there was always that promise of backwards compatibility, right? Like that, oh, you're on SDK 2.12. If you're using a not new API, it will work with your older KFP backend. Now, I think there's a bit more freedom because the versions are aligned. The whole in my head, it's supposed to make it clear to you what SDK you should be using, right? Depending on what, like if you're using a KFP 2.4, you should use SDK 2.4 with it. That's the whole point of aligning. Otherwise, I kind of don't see why we're even doing this. Is to make that clearer. Then the patch releases would be like, hey, there's a security issue or bug fix, we can backport it. But after we define our support, like, is it 2 versions back or whatever? I think that is how we should proceed. So I guess my stance is that it's not guaranteed. What's guaranteed is that your SDK will work regardless of whether it's a new or old API. Your SDK, you should be using the SDK that maps to your KFP backend miner. What do others think about this?
I'll just add, this is how we test today. So when you make a PR against KFP, it's using the in repo SDK. So we're only ever testing with the code that is at that commit level, I guess, right? The KFP release time. So that seems to align better with what we're actually supporting, but it'd be good to get other people's thoughts on.
Anish, would you like to elaborate on your comment?
Well, we are at time, so maybe we continue this next time.
I think that this warrants a deeper, like, so obviously this is not a final decision, this is just a discussion. I think versions and how we want to support and everything should be, does it make sense for a kept for it? Some written thing that like exists for like weeks that we can have community input on and get some consensus. So I feel like that should be the next step. So like what I'll do is after 2.5 release, I'll create a doc and bring it to the community and then leave it up and have folks chime in and it'll be like, this is how we're going to do 2.6 release or whatever it'll be called. And like, what does everybody think about that? Right. And this is what we'll support and not support. And then we'll get feedback and then we'll do it that way.
Yeah, maybe not a kept, but like just like a support statement document in the repo that we can all agree on.
Mm-hmm. statement plus how versioning will work from 2. Post 2.5 there.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Session. I love this topic. We're over time. Do we want to punt this for next time, Alex?
Sure, there's no rush.
All right. It's coming. It's gonna happen. I'm gonna make it happen. All right. We'll discuss it. All right. So I'll put this for the next meeting. Thank you everyone for joining. We're at the end of the agenda items and we're out of time. So as always, this meeting is recorded. I will post it into the Pipelines community playlist on YouTube. Thanks everyone. See you next time. Take care.